firing is a lot like hiring actually, in reverse. You should ask a very simple question. You have worked with someone for the past N period. You know this person can do this. You have tried your best. This is the max they can do. Now, imagine they're not in the company. Would you hire them? If your answer is no, or it is vague, it is time to let them go. These guys, what they did was they spoke with these companies and they said a very simple thing. Just because you have designers does not mean that you are design mature. Not all good designs make good products. Not all good products make good businesses. So you have to be a little guarded, reserved, and sometimes silence is better than just blurting out something that makes you look like a fool on day one. What does it mean to head design for products that serve hundreds of millions of Indians? And what does it even take to redesign systems where stakes are money, trust, and legacy? Today, we're speaking with Sourav Sarkar, who heads design at IDFC FIRST Bank, one of India's most ambitious digital first banks. Previously, he was the head of design at Airtel and Wynk. Sourav has seen scale and has made the challenging shift from delivering in services companies to taking complete ownership in product-led organizations. In today's episode, we'll talk about switching from services to products, designing for challenging domains at scale, decoding design maturity, and how to lead and hire teams that deliver. With that, Sourav, thanks for taking the time and joining us for Behind the Screens Season 2. It's amazing to be here. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for getting me here. No problem. Of course, Sourav, I'm going to directly jump into this. That's the theme of the podcast.
Sure.
All right. And I'm going to directly talk to you about so many things that I'm very excited to know from you personally. I'm sure the audience will love it. But that being said, I'm shooting the first question. Sourav, you work with organizations like Airtel, IDFC FIRST Bank, and Wynk, where you've served literally everyone, from college kids to 70-year-olds. What are some complexities that such a diverse audience brings to you?
Okay, big hitter of a first question. Thank you so much for asking that. You see, I mean, people always talk about scale. When I speak with designers, I'm interviewing, they're like, I want to work with a big company. I think it's a very pertinent question. What do you do when you work with such a big company that has such a diverse audience set? So the first thing that I realized was that these companies, by virtue of the total addressable market, the entire set of people we are serving, they become essential services in the industry, right?
Yep.
And what really happens after that is the way you design for the customers of these organizations change, because you now have to look at products that can cater to each of those primary segments of customers. You have to think about customers either as a spectrum where you're generifying a design, or you think about customers in certain specific cohorts. Right? So the personas that we deal with, they carry significant impact on how we design the products.
Got it. So following up to that, when you take a certain design decision, how do you decide that this design decision may work better for someone who's going to college, while someone who's probably in their 40s or 50s who might find it challenging to decode or decipher what the app is talking about? When do you draw the line and when do you understand, okay, this is the decision I'm making for them?
Yeah. So in design, there is this particular principle called the most advanced yet acceptable, the Maya principle, that essentially means that you can have novelty. For example, Snapchat, I think, they brought the entire idea of novelty into interaction design. User behavior, where things vanish, you can move with highly gestural moves across the interface, right? But when they did that, they were very deliberate that I do not want the parents of the kids I'm serving to actually come and use it.
Yeah.
So in our designs, so when we kind of, take a design pattern in the design system, we often ask ourselves, is it advanced? Yes. But is it acceptable to what particular segment, right? No, perhaps. So then we kind of showed it down. And we typically try and stick to norms unless you can break the norm in a very predictable manner. That is a very strong information sent. For example, we were designing something the other day where we had kind of assume that we had some cards and people would understand how to click these cards and they would click these cards. But when I was testing a product, I was like, there is no more information. And when I told my designer who designed it, they realized that, sorry, but this is clickable.
Yeah.
So it was advanced perhaps, but the visual affordance of it was not as such that I could click. There was no signifier out there, right? So I think we have got to go through iterations and testing to figure that particular bit out. And you never know what works, to be honest. Things catch up. There is massive en masse learning that happens across the board after a period of time. Scrolling, for example, used to be such a difficult activity with heavy mice and, scroll boards and screens earlier. Now people have just gotten used to it.
So when you talk about acceptable designs, I'm jumping off the gun here, but how does someone know whether this will be acceptable? And maybe you will never know is how you answered, right? But can we not A/B test certain decisions and find out whether it's acceptable or not?
That's the way to do it. Like, you have multivariate tests, but even in multivariate tests, right, in A/B tests, for example, A, B, or C tests, you can only check one variable.
Yeah.
You could also go for conversions and you could go for, click-through rates, etc. They're always there. In product talks, that works. But if you're in services, that does not usually work. You never get to actually know that. But yeah, that's always a great tactic. But user testing, even before you go out to market, especially if you're dealing with products that have a huge reach, you cannot stand to fail for critical products. So you must test at least to some level. You must do usability tests before you move out.
All right, I'm sure the stakes are very high when it comes to at least millions of users that you're catering to.
Absolutely.
So, Sourav, one of the things that you pointed out that in services it may work, in products it may not work. I'm coming. My next question actually based on that you worked in both services organizations and in product organizations, and you consciously made that switch. But I'm sure there must be something that caught you off guard. So what caught you off guard when you actually decided to move from services to a product-led company?
Yeah, I mean, again, one of the questions I ask candidates, why do you want to join this? Why do you want to join that? And they say, hey, I want to go from, I'm in consulting or I'm in services, I want to go to products. And then they would often be curious, what is it that it sort of like takes? So if I had to share a couple of things, I think, first of all, it's contextual to what kind of service company were you in versus what kind of a product company are you getting into.
Okay.
It's actually very specific. I could spend hours dissecting both, right? Because the basis, each of them, the dynamics change. What your expectations are different. For example, we might have service companies that do only design versus service companies like where I had worked on, where you are delivering both design as well as the front end and sometimes the back end too, right? Now, in such a case, as a designer, you would have a much stronger hold on the quality, the end quality of the product. Because your service, your agency holds that quality together. You don't have to do a lot out there. But if you're going from an agency that's doing only design, but is not looking at dev, then you might be caught off guard in your product organization. In product organizations also, there are product organizations where development might be happening through partners. Or they might be in-house, or your development partners, your engineering partners are not co-located with you. So your holdover quality might strongly vary. You must ask these questions while you are interviewing for the organization, that how does design work with engineering? How does design work with analytics and all of that stuff? Number one. Talking about analytics, the second thing that caught me off guard was data-driven design. Absolute focus on metrics. I'll admit it on screen. I'm more a visual person than a number person. But that is one thing I had to either learn the hard way. And that's something, it's non-negotiable for designers. If you want to make an impact and make that impact visible or show potential impact, you must understand numbers to a certain extent. In these product organizations, numbers are tracked so diligently, week on week, month on month, and you can see those charts. If you have access to business, you can see all of those numbers making an impact. That small choice you made in design, how the click-through rate change, you can look at that, right? I think one example is very well known in Amazon. The buy now button is a huge case study, right? And we're talking with.
Tell me more about it, actually, since you are talking.
Yeah, I think the CTA from add to cart to buy now, I think made a significant change just by the copywriting of it, just the UX writing of it, right? But change expectations. Now, you never kind of think too much about these kind of changes were in an agency because you are delivering or moving on to the next project. But when you have stayed with the product in a product organization, you actually get to see the downstream impact of your decisions. And those get told through the story of numbers, and you have to be ready for numbers.
Yeah, it's a great point. But I have a counter question to it that designers typically ask me, and I don't want to put that on you now, is that they typically say that, yeah, till the time that it gets implemented, till the time I actually track my numbers, there are two problems. One is till the time it gets implemented, I don't even know what I designed.
Correct.
That is one. And second is that they are like, I don't get the access to analytics within my organizations because they are very sensitive numbers and only revealed to certain people. So how does someone, if they don't have access, I understand, how does someone get the flavor of it at least? What should they ask their leader? And second is that how does someone manage the entire gap between design to engineering which exists?
I think it's a very loaded question. And I understand that you're asking this to me in the pretext of product organization. So I'm just going
product organization.
Yeah, I'm just going to discount agency for the time being because marketing maybe numbers hote hain largely.
Correct.
But I'll just take that out of the equation. If you're a leader, and I see everything that we're talking about is a very broad generalization. Yeah, all generalizations are inaccurate, including that generalization.
Yeah.
But I'll say that it differs a lot between what level of designer you are.
Yeah.
If you are someone who's leading a team, I'm sorry to say this, but you cannot complain that you do not have access to analytics or to, for the sake of engineering, right? Yes, if you're a very junior designer and you're not able to make that impact, it does take a certain amount of maturity of the organization to appreciate that you need access to such data and trends, etc. If you're a senior designer or you are someone who's aspiring to lead a team, etc., what I'd recommend is make sure that you build your partnerships very early on in the organizational, when you get into the organization. You should know them by name. You should meet them. Your job is not to sit down and design Figma screens only. Maybe.
Yeah, of course.
But in the absence of that, I think there are two types of organizations. Organizations that test and pre-validate versus organizations that test and post-validate in production. Okay. Pre-validation is around a design maturity that involves testing that you also asked about A/B, etc., or other usability methods. And post would be through analytics and going through a hypothesis-driven design. You take a hypothesis, you do it, and you see how it's performing.
Correct.
And the proxy I would say is if your design is not doing well, trust me, you will know.
Yeah,
because you know what? Good design no one talks about. Bad design someone will definitely come and tell you about. So those are the vaguest signals I would say. But yes, if you do have access, it's always great. It's always a great thing to just, regardless of your level, go and ask someone, may I be a part of this meeting? Especially meetings where you say business move. And there is no harm in asking. And let me tell you, most designers do not ask. Because they already canceled the idea that they will be approved to sit in those meetings, right? This open door meeting policy, no one calls it out, but honestly, a lot of people, a lot of leaders in the other domain, in the other functions would be more than okay for you to sit down with them.
Got it.
So I would say ask.
Asking, I think there's no harm to it. There's no harm.
Yeah, you may be rejected. So
yeah, exactly. I say this that the maximum person can tell you is no, right? I mean, there's nothing beyond that size.
Precise.
So, but that being said, I caught on something that you said, right? You said that, Rohan, I'm a visuals person, and I started realizing the importance of analytics. My question is, were you pushed into it, or did you take that decision yourself? And if either, why did you take that decision, and how should someone take that decision?
I think I would recommend you take the decision for yourself, because if you do not, someone else will make the choice for you, or you will be left behind. Trust me, you will be left behind. Especially as senior leaders is what I'll say. And being a number person is not just about analyzing numbers. It's not about just solving that trend graph, etc. It's also about managing your own finances. It works in real life for that matter,
Exactly.
What I started doing is, I think designers by nature are inquisitive people. And if you are a good designer, you are curious about trends. You are curious about, let's say, if I have been in the industry for the last 15 years, how has my salary grown? Now, what's the best way to do this? Is to actually do a chart.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Those are also very number orientation. So don't block yourself out. Don't feel that you are helpless because of numbers. You are already number ready. Don't worry about it. You just have to go and find a few ways to kind of implement it. I think that's about it. And another way that number orientation is so critical for designers is that you have got to understand the impact of your own design. And the impact is not just about business at all points of time, obviously. Sometimes, you have to understand whether you are making and building a good design. How do you articulate it, especially for your portfolio? People have heard about Google's Heart framework. In the Heart framework, you talk about how you look at happiness and how you look at retention and time spent, etc. And even when you are trying to go for those specific parameters, measuring it still is an important activity. So that orientation, let's not call it number, let's call it data orientation.
Yeah.
Right? And trend orientation, I think that becomes very, very critical in this particular case for designers.
Absolutely. When you spoke about this, I realized that designers who now, let's assume that they start getting access to analytics, but what they start lacking is actually measuring it.
Absolutely.
Then they're like, okay, numbers hai, but you have to measure it essentially to know and understand those in depth. But with that being said, we spoke about analytics, and what I want to get back to is a little bit about your career and career trajectory, because I think that's pretty interesting. So you've been 15 years into design, and you've only worked across 4 organizations. So when do you decide, or when does anyone decide of when to make that switch from one org to the other?
It's a little personal, but I'll try and generify it as much as I can. I think, in fact, I'll just give you a small backstory. When I started my career right out of my bachelor's in design, I had this very broad idea that, I'd spend a few years in an agency. I'd spend a few years, and when I say few, I mean 2 years, Then I'll spend a few years in a product organization, maybe in a big consulting, maybe then in a startup, to kind of get a very well-rounded, holistic, flavor of design, because design happens very differently out there. What I didn't realize is there is just so much to learn everywhere. So I spent about 8 years in the service industry and consulting, looking at delivery models, understanding what good quality is, what good taste is, traveling around the world to sort of consult. But after that certain point of time, when I felt that I had saturated my learning, I felt that, it's time to think about product, because I think all service-based designers would understand that if you are not working with your client for a long-term project, you rarely get to see the fruits of your efforts, right? So when I felt that I had saturated myself in terms of the different kinds of domains or clients or volumes of work and qualities of work, I felt that maybe it's time. I would not say that I would never go back to agency. I would definitely go back. I think there is delight when working with an agency, but I felt that that was a good time for me to switch. Similarly, in the rest of the organizations as well, when I had set things up and the systems were set up for auto function, that's when I felt that maybe now it's a good time to make a move. It's also a little personal. For example, if I'm a craft person and if management is something that's coming to me, and I'll take it with open hands, and I have done that since the beginning. But if you want a little bit of craft in your work as well, a little bit hands-on. I know a lot of leaders look down upon it. I don't. I'm more than happy to take that other job as well, right? So that there's a little mix. So I think those are a few of the very personal things. And if it's personal, but I would say don't leave a job when it is not giving you money or someone is asking you to leave. You should always be on the lookout. You should always understand what your current value in the market is. It's always good to do that. It's healthy, but be transparent with your leader. Go out, explore that. refine your portfolio, right? But leave when you feel that you have saturated your learning.
Yeah.
Not just because you are not getting paid and they're paying like 5x. 5x pay is not always better, right? And that has happened. It has happened.
I think that's something I want to cover in the conversation, regardless that. But I'll come to that later. But that being said, so when you're talking, because you've worked across both spectrums of services and products now. So Saurav, because you've worked across services and products and you've made that switch, I want to know, what is that mindset that someone needs to have while moving from services company to a product company across any stage for that matter?
Sure. I'll just continue from the previous question that we had on what caught me off guard. So for sure, I think you have to be a little bit more aware of data and data-driven design. So you need to have a little bit of a flair for that. So that's a strong mindset change. And like I said, if you are not tuning yourself, then someone will tune it for you. But I think the bigger mental model change is that you're moving from strategy to systems.
Okay.
I'll try and elaborate on that. Strategy, when you're working in agencies, right, and you're working as a consultant, you are looking at change. You are looking at changing, an incumbent organization and what are the pitfalls, etc., and so on and so forth. So you're creating something new or something, you're refreshing something. And that's a very strategic move. But in a product, after you have left it there, what does it take for that to go to fruition? That journey, that 0 to 1 ke baad, after the 0 to 1, the 1 to 10, or for that matter, 10 to 100 journey that happens through a very complex system of people around you, the culture around you, the landscape of the domain that you are in. It happens there, right? And therefore, you have to sort of like think of yourself as a parent when you go to a product company, because there's a product child that's been conceived. It needs a baby care period, for example, and you need to stick with it. You cannot just throw it out of the window if it starts crying.
Yeah,
right. So I think that's been a very big mental model shift for me. That this particular product, this particular baby, has to grow up in a particular system and a culture around it. You have to get them to school. You have to sort of like get them the right kind of playmates and all of that stuff. In the context of an organization, it's about your partnership with engineering, like we talked about data analytics. It's about what are the controls and the systems on top of the compliance that sort of fall into it. There's just so much that goes into it. And you have to be ready for that. It can get convoluted. So if your head is in the right space, you have to be very, very, very patient when you're in a product organization, because things can feel slow and complicated, but you have to stick. You have to, even if you do not love your product, you have to stick along with it. You cannot just let go.
Yeah, I think that comes with a little maturity as well, is what I feel. But just to ask a question on top of this, what did you do that helped you actually build that maturity? Let's say you were in a services firm and you went into a product firm, and I'm sure it caught you, something must have caught you off guard. What helped you build that maturity?
It's an interesting question, because when you join as a design leader, you, depending on the size of the organization, there are certain key products that need your oversight. And you cannot distribute your attention across the board for each and everything. You have to prioritize as a leader as well. I would highly recommend, what I did was I took a few products that were close to launch, and some agencies were already working on it. So I stuck around with the entire life cycle to make sure that I understand the milestones of that particular product, and how did different businesses and teams come out together, etc. And I was quiet for most of the time unless I understood what is being done. I don't think I went ahead and started giving suggestions right off that, because that's what people expect. So you need to embed yourself into one complete product life cycle to understand what does the politics and economics of the whole product look like, from conception to launch and adoption, and not just adoption, but adoption and retention.
Yeah. One of the things that I feel, then you've said something really important here. One of the myths that people typically face is that when you join in an organization as a leader, you're always expected to perform from day one. But that in a wrong organization, yes. But in an organization that actually works, you get the time to learn, right? I mean, you have that time where you can learn, absorb, and then talk about everything that you sort of.
I don't think it's a wrong or right organization. I think everyone expects everyone to hit the ground running. But I think as a leader, when you join an organization, the first thing is for you to empathize with the organization as an entity. And it's not about what's being asked from you, but for you to understand at this particular juncture, you have to be smart enough, obviously. And at this particular juncture, is there something that's stuck in the roadmap that I can help unblock, right? With whatever I'm carrying till now, right? Or is it about just creating a team that's not inexistent yet? What is your priority right there? And that's also performance as a design leader, by the way. Good leadership starts with good hiring. So your first job is to make sure that you do hiring fast and do it right. So if there is nothing else to do, at least you will hire, right? So that is still performing from day one.
Got it. All right.
But I think what you're alluding to was more towards execution strategy and stuff.
Execution.
It's okay to sort of learn. And I think you can still give your inputs, but don't be naive because a product will have its complexities. And I always give this example of Netflix, where I think, as designers, we tend to be very open-ended about, we are very experimentative about stuff, right? So in Netflix, there's this fantastic case study where they say that there was this value proposition earlier where they said on a website where Netflix is supposed to be signed up for, should you show the content that Netflix already has inside of it? And whether it allows customers to buy into the product before they sign up. Great idea. I mean, sounds very customer-centric, very user-centric, right? It brought their conversions down. And a lot of the people who came had the same idea. They created a playbook out of it and said, boss, we did this and did not work for this reason. So not all good designs make good products. Not all good products make good businesses. So you have to be a little guarded, just sort of like reserve. And sometimes silence is better than just blurting out something that makes you look like a fool on day one.
Yeah, fair enough. I think this is something sort of, I've been that person who's learned by being a fool, right? When I used to go consult my clients early on, right? And I used to talk about some innovative ideas and thoughts that I believe that, you know what, why are we not doing this? Why is this not swipeable and colorful? Or why
were you doing it from an agency perspective? You can do that. As agencies, you have that leeway.
Yeah, I completely agree. But then if you do it once, it's understood. But when you do it 3 times, the question then starts becoming about, listen, boss, understand us first. Because we've done all of these things before.
Absolutely.
Or this doesn't work due to an A reason, something doesn't work due to business, something doesn't work due to technology.
Correct.
And when you start knowing that, you realize, I shouldn't have, said all of this out loud. I should have been more thought through with my approach. So I think that's important what you pointed out. But sort of what I want to go on to next is I want to dive deeper into your experience of designing for hundreds of millions of users, as I've spoken in the introduction, right? So drawing from your experience from Airtel or IDFC FIRST Bank, what should designers typically consider for building products that have a massive reach?
Got it. That's a beautiful question. When you have this massive reach, or like you said, the TAM, the total addressable market is also very broad. And I said earlier that your scoping of your product it needs to be precise and targeted, right? So your cohorts need to be targeted. This means that organizations like these, they have to create products for these different customer segments so that digital acquisition and marketing can target those people for those products. But since the spread is wide, it means that your line of products is also a lot. Unlike a lot of the startups where your product is very focused and very analogous to the core product, here you will have a whole bunch of products. Organization, Airtel, actually, you think of Airtel as a telco, but we were doing financial services there, we were doing entertainment there, and we were doing advertisement as a business out there.
Internet.
वो तो core है. That's still core, core telco. And then we're looking after all the internal systems and all the internal products and apps. For example, the app that you'd use to sort of like set towers up and coverage, right? All of that. So what happens is when you have a lot of products, each product will have a certain headcount of people, right? And you'll also be operating in a broad oligopoly, which means that you would have a certain set of competitors because these are big systemic operators, which means you cannot have too many systemic operators.
Correct.
And it means that you will have a very strong competition. Sometimes it's a zero-sum game of business. आप इसको छोड़ के आप इसको करेंगे, इसको लेके इसको छोड़ेंगे, right? So that's how it happens. So your competition would be very high. It means that your pressure for product launches, feature coverage becomes very important, which means that you would have little time to work on polishing each of the products. Because the number of products are vast, the line of products are vast. So that's something that designers need to be very aware of, number one. Number two is you have to understand that organizations like these, they were not the earliest adopters of design, but they had engineering teams already there because they are engineering-based companies. Bank has to work with data, right? They have to work with all the systems that make branch banking possible. Telco has to work with data to be able to create the right, tower setup, for example, or how to reach customers. So data, analytics, marketing are the core functions of the business that already are there. As a design team, you are getting into that territory slightly later on. So also remember that these organizations may not be very product mature to begin with. And they're also setting it up because actually, I think with this whole digital transformation, right, everyone is moving tech first. I think everyone wants that share of the pie for the right reasons. And design is getting adopted as the differentiator, but slightly later in the cycle. So you have to be ready for an org that's already functioning in some way. And your job is to be a change maker as a leader. It's to be a change maker. As a junior, it is for you to sort of, at least, work with the people who can make the change available for you.
Got it. So when you talk about they're later into the game, it essentially, what you're saying is that they are already there in terms of their technology, in terms of their marketing, etc. It's just that adoption takes some time and you have to probably be ready to give that the time that it needs.
Actually, what I meant was in-house design teams.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these organizations, everything needs an interface at the end of the day. Technology is made visible by the interface.
Correct.
Largely. So these orgs would start with certain agency partnerships, short, long term.
Yep.
And then in-house design teams, when they have reaped the benefits, they've seen the benefits, they would want more control. And that's a typical pattern,
of course.
They will set up in-house teams. I think I mean adoption from that angle.
Got it.
They are already very customer-centric, which means that they are already very design-focused from the broader aspect of capital D design.
Correct.
But the formation of in-house teams is something that lags a little bit, and you have to be ready for that because it means that you have to work little by little and get them to that particular stage. It will take time. It's a systemic change for them as well. Like I said, you have to empathize with your organization.
So drawing on to talking about telecom, banking, legacy organizations as such who've been into the industries, these industries have existed for generations. Some of the industries have lasted longer than any other industry that we see out here. But they're not typically considered to be cool in the design field by designers, right? So now, that being said, how do you make something that could potentially seem to be boring, not so boring?
Okay, that's a very polar question. Yes, I do understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
I think it's not about the companies, but the domain themselves that you're talking about. Yeah, I understand. And I think I'll go back to the very first point I had made that these are generational domains for the good reasons that they had to be essential to the operations of the nation, the country, wherever they are. And when you're playing this particular game, you are a systemic player. You are broad, you are big. And when you are talking about anything that's a system level, very broad and big and complex, right?
Yeah.
Change is always slow.
Yeah.
Or slower than you would expect. And the agility or the nimbleness with which, change appears and gets out to the end customer and designer, and they get to taste it, is actually, it takes a little while.
Yeah.
So I think it's not as much about the domains themselves, because honestly, between you and I, things have changed so drastically.
Yeah.
Like I talked about Telco, I talked about fintech, for example, and everyone is running for that share of pie, right?
Yeah.
A lot of designers that I interview today are like, hey, I want to get into fintech. I obviously ask them why. That's a different question. But you have to build good examples.
Okay.
Whether it is good experiences or it is about delightful products or a feature, at least if there is one small thing you could build, you need to start setting good examples. And I think it's a little difficult because good examples mean often disrupting a mental model for the domain.
Yeah.
And that's something that will take a systemic change to get to the end customer.
Yeah.
Right. So therefore, what I do typically is whenever I'm faced with something that's, with something that is boring, first of all, I ask myself, is it boring for a good reason? Just because, just because it's boring doesn't mean it's not effective, right? That's a very big question to ask yourself. And like I said, as a designer, do not just go about throwing changes all around the board. But if you see that there's a particular thing that's been sort of, hitting you, for example, let's say OTPs, banking, OTPs are so big, right? And I feel that as a benchmark, a lot of B2C products have changed OTPs in the way that you do not need to hit enter, because after the last digit is filled, it automatically validates. Either it gives you an error or moves you forward. Very small design patterns.
Correct.
And these are the things that can be safely adopted in legacy domains as well, which I think are small experiences. Delight by 1,000 cuts is what we are saying we can totally bring in.
Yeah. So again, what is delight by 1,000 cuts?
It just means that you do not need to sort of like make everything celebratory. Can there be small moments of delight?
Yeah, absolutely.
For example, I remember this one case where when I was working and designing for the Airtel Thanks app, we said that, hey, you have just paid your bill.
Yeah.
Should the bill card go away? Or should it remain for a certain period of time and tell you that, boss, chill, you have paid the bill. Right? So
interesting.
Now, the obvious question would think of it like a notification, you can take it up. But we said, let's stay with this. And that, according to us, hypothetically reduces anxiety. And those are small things you can bring.
No, love that. I think that inherently, because when we've also started speaking, and what I realized through this entire conversation, that Sourav, you seem like a very fun person. All right. And then it really reflects in the way you have this conversation as well. So what I'm inclined to know is that how does this fun personality bleed into work, into your work in banking, fintech, telco, either or?
I have not given it a lot of thought, but right off the bat, I'll say that it's less about the products. I don't think I bring my fun personality in products, going back to the previous question, because it has to be more thoughtful. Right? Yes, you can express yourself as a designer. You can have a signature design, which can totally happen. And I think I've realized there is one that I have, but I'll not talk about that today. But what I try and do is I try and lighten the mood up in the team, if I can.
Yeah. So more of a cultural, you put your fun parts into the cultural
bit. Yeah, because, when designers are happy, they also create things that are happy, I feel.
Yeah.
So I try and influence it there, probably not in the product directly.
Got it. So, Sourav, while we're talking about domains, teams, maturity of organizations, and because you've been in this industry, you've transformed organizations, at least across through their design phase and brought them to maturity. I want to understand what is design transformation and what does it even take to transform an enterprise through design?
Oh, that's a great question. Thank you for asking. I think before transformation, what are we transforming is more important to talk about. And I think we're talking about transformation from a maturity perspective, I think 5 years back, Envision had released this report on design maturity. It was a significant seminal study. 2,200 companies, I think, were interviewed. And the design teams were obviously sort of like checked. They were, it's out there. It's called the New Design Frontier, if I'm not wrong, but Design Better. But I'll take this little bit because that really helps articulate what I'm about to say. These guys, what they did was they spoke with these companies and they said a very simple thing. Just because you have designers does not mean that you are design mature.
Interesting.
Very, very simple also and intuitive to understand, right? So they found out that about 51% of those companies, and by the way, we're talking about Silicon Valley, we're talking about 5 years back, things have changed. I think the Indian scenario is very, very different culturally as well. But I'll take that example so that it helps us clear this out. They found that 51% of these companies that they interviewed out of 2,200, the designers were mere producers, executors. I say you design. And then, then it sort of like moved to this idea of connectors, where designers were connectors. You are not just building what I'm saying, but you really understand what I'm saying. You have analytics and all of that stuff. You kind of understand those things and you know the reason behind those designs. Slightly mature. Then comes the next drop, the next milestone where we have architects. Architects are a lot about raising the floor, which means that you have created systems that operationalize and automate a lot of these things so that they can happen at scale, 10 to 100 kind of a thing, right? And you are shaping that entire system for efficiency, speed, and all of those things. And you can do that only if you're both able to produce as well as able to connect. Without that, you cannot get there. And then there are scientists, 5%, I think, who are the people where design and research were leading the roadmap. They were informing the business on what to do next, how to do it, etc., etc. And that another mere 5% at the top echelon was, I think, visionaries. They were not just doing it for the organization, but they were creating benchmarks for the entire industry, saying that we are setting benchmarks, that this is the bar raiser. So now, if you look at it this way, on the volume of design team versus the value extraction of design team, for me, that's design maturity. And when you talk about transformation, it's about where as a leader you join the organization and how do you take it one notch further, 2 notches further, right? I have been lucky to join organizations that already had an inherent customer centricity built in, which means that they already had an inherent respect for what design could bring. But they had a certain perception of what designers can do and cannot do. And my job was to change that, right? So what I did was I had to form those partnerships so that my team could be connectors and not just producers, to talk more strategic, be in those boardroom meetings, have a seat on the table, for example, and build influence from top down, right? So I would say that's how it's done at the end of the day.
So, Sourav, riding on to that, when you talk about design maturity, and firstly, there was a phenomenal example, I think.
I know, right?
I'm gonna read up on that for sure. But how do you know whether the company is now transforming from scientists to visionaries, which are the top 2 quarters? Or how do you know that I am doing work that will take me to the visionary stage?
When you stop finding benchmarks.
That's beautiful. It's just so simple, but beautiful.
And when you are so hungry for innovation that you're like, this is table stake. The best is a table stake. That's when that's what we call differentiation in business, by the way. Right? Where it's like no one can achieve, or other people will achieve it, but after a certain point of time, you are carrying it forward.
That's simple. But when you, and this is exactly what I try putting into thoughts of people, is that when you stop somewhere chasing that, okay, who's doing what? I used to do that personally, I've done that a lot. When I used to look at others and say that, okay, these guys are doing something like this, we should do this. But that's all just distraction. And it always will probably keep me at the scientist space till I don't reach the visionary part. But So what I want to ask you is, I know you sort of covered some things about it. I want to understand, when a person wants to join a team, how or what are some signals that the person can find that to know that the company is design mature?
That's a good one. I think
Maybe we'll start with how you found some companies to be design mature.
it's a good question. Okay. First of all, I think I belong to a breed of designers who are a little bit more risk-taking. So I don't think I looked at my organizations from a design maturity perspective. Or rather, honestly, if you ask me to be very frank and open, I steered away from organizations that were design mature. Let me elaborate. What I mean is, I did have the chances and the choices to join organizations that were both product mature and design mature, but I deliberately chose to go to organizations that were in a slightly lower part of the hierarchy, so that I felt that I could make an impact, and it would speak for me. And I have, looking back, I would do that again. But if you were to ask me, what does design mature look like? First, you will see the polish in their work for obvious reasons. But I think, again, I'm generalizing, because polish is sometimes by virtue of the founder, by virtue of the designer, it could be by virtue of the engineer, it could be anything, but you would find polish. The other signal, very simple one, is that when you go to and if you speak with the founders or the heads or the directors of the organization, you would find a common verbiage, a very deep passion for customer centricity. And you have to ask, especially if you're a leader, you have to ask, what is the scope of design in your org? Okay. Are you only looking at design for your end products, or do you want to also look at your design for HR products inside the organization? What is your scale? What are the products that you're going to work with? Which parts of the products are you going to target, or do you want design to target everything? Then you want to also talk about cost. How much are you willing to spend on design? And after that comes, contribution and culture. So you want to understand, where does design sit, and to what extent are they able to contribute into the product roadmap or the release roadmap, etc., etc. Do they have their hands on with analytics, etc.? And do they actually remember their engineering partners' names and their analytics partners' names, etc.? Because in an open org that's design mature, this will automatically happen. Connectors, remember? And finally, culture. Do these designers feel happy if you talk to them, or do they feel stuck? I think is an important one, because that's a very good signal, is what I would say. So look at the LinkedIn posts, stalk them, see what kind of, do they feel happy? Are they inexistent? It's okay. See, honestly, I'll generalize, because a lot of these signals are also, they can be false negatives or false positives also, right? What seems like grass greener on the other side might not be, but you have to take a judicious call. But these are some broad signals you can find. Also, one small thing, so
please.
Whether there's systems in place, like are there design systems, or is it a very clear branding? Also, I think that's a very small signal. So yeah.
So Sourav, you spoke about that you could have gotten into organizations that were product and design mature both, but you chose not to. When someone outside who's watching this is trying to make this decision, what would you say was your decision, and why did you choose to go into companies that are not fully mature in this?
I think that's a very personal choice. And I can only think in hindsight, because honestly, at that point of time, I was not very actively thinking about it. There's a certain allure to joining an organization where you feel that you can steer the organization, right? There's an allure, it's inbuilt, but you have to be ready for all the hustle you need to do to get to that particular point, because you come with some credibility, but are you really reliable within the organization? These are huge costs. I had to spend very, very long days just to sort of like make sure that, we bring enough reliability into the team once I have been hired. But for people who are thinking about something like this, I would say, honestly, go and meet the people you're going to work with. That's a very small but very important tip. You will understand the vibe of the organization from there, try and talk to a few designers, and if join organizations that you want to disrupt only if you yourself are ready for disruption.
Yeah.
Again, like I said, it's like parenthood. So you have to be ready for that particular hustle and effort, because it saps a lot of energy from you. Okay. So you have to be really, really, really ready for that, because one of my previous bosses had given me this beautiful mental model of, what we call the rock star and the superstar mental model, where we had said that rock stars are people who are great performers, but they're steady, they're paced, they have a great work-life balance, they're sure what they want in life, that this is the balance I want, right? They will probably put off that promotion if it means it's going to kill their lives, for example. Yeah. And then there are superstars who feel like, I want to go to an organization, I want to double down, triple down, and I want to grow as the organization grows. I want to sort of like do double the work. I want to sort of like, really bring it up a notch and so on and so forth. But I know that I'm going to defocus on some of my personal aspects. People go through these phases in certain times of their lives. You are a high performer, you became a parent, things will need time to sort of get back on track, right?
Yeah.
If you want it. So understand what phase of life you are into, what can you afford, and then you can take that particular call, is what I would say.
So it's always going to be a conscious call.
Yeah.
And from what I understand, neither of them are wrong.
They aren't. What works for you? Which is why I said, at that point, I could have afforded it, and I did.
But so, sort of one follow-up question to that, talking about organizations, is that it's a hot take that I want. Let's say if you are in a boardroom where all the people are non-designers, okay, how do you prove your value there?
Okay, let's talk about the term proving, which means that someone trusts your opinion. You're able to influence it, basically, right? And I think, it's less about proving your value, but I think it's more about, do they trust you to inform them in a way, influencing. And if I were to break it down, there's an actual equation called the trust equation, which says trust is equal to credibility, what's the history you come from, plus reliability. Can we rely on you in the moments of need in our current organization, plus intimacy. Do we know each other well enough that you are predictable to me as a human? And that's the whole numerator. And there's a denominator called self-orientation, which is, are you egotistic? Are you thinking about yourself, or is not everything about you?
Okay.
Right? So remember, 3 numerators, 1 denominator.
Who decides the denominator? I want to know that.
Now, the person, the designer, whoever it is, in fact, this is not just for designers, so anyone, anywhere. The more someone is like me, I, or I did this, I did that, and so on and so forth, or you know what I'm talking about, right? That single denominator brings all the numerators together in one single fell swoop. It's 3x the whole numerator put together. All the credibility you have built, you have carried, all the reliability you have built, all the intimacy you have built. If you become selfish and a self-centric, it brings the whole trust down. But now let me take that aside for a moment. Let's imagine that you are not that person. So credibility. First of all, you should not have to prove your value, because you were picked in this boardroom because someone found value in you. That's credibility. If you have to again prove to someone that you are credible, I think we have lost the plot. We have wrong hire, both for the designer as well as the organization. Reliability. Has this person made valuable contributions in the past in this organization? Can we rely on him, right? Domain knowledge, hai ki nahi, for example, and all of that stuff, right? Does he think on time? Does he think that things need to get out fast? Does he or she have a sense of urgency, for example? And finally, intimacy. Are you in good cohorts with the team that's out there? Do they understand you? Do they understand how you think? Or are they like, this person is always saying no to everything or saying yes to everything, right? And so on and so forth. So I'd say that when you are a designer, there is this great book called Articulating Design Decisions, a fantastic thin book. And I think that talks about how you can take your designs and how you can explain that to someone in a non-designerly way as well. So I would say that when you're with designers, be jargonish, it's okay, because it sort of like helps you brush it up. When you're with business, try and actually think ahead that what can be an easy, simple mental model way of explaining the same thing without using jargon.
Yeah.
Right? And if you have numbers, the best.
I think what you're somewhere pointing out is it's exactly what we do as a living as designers is to explain people in the language that they understand.
Hey, affordance nahi hai isme. No, they don't. You'll simply say that this doesn't look like I can click on it. That's what you'll say.
Yeah.
And because of this, we're losing out on this particular number of people. That's it.
Yeah.
Your job is done.
Simply put, like I was saying, like we are always in the, we're living in the user's shoes. We're just living in now internal people's shoes.
Two more small things. One is, it's also good to listen.
Yeah.
You speak the last. It's always good to listen, understand the vibe of the room. You have to read the room. So don't go jumping into suggestions and so on and so forth. And speak only if you have something valuable to speak is what I feel as a designer also. And remember that you are representing the whole team, which means you're representing the maturity of the whole design team. So you have to be very mature in your body language, all of it. So you have to be very, very, self-aware of that particular situation. And I'll say speak only when, you feel you have something valuable to add. And also, if you really disagree with someone or something, call it out in a very nice, polite manner. It's always important to hold your position, but you can always disagree and commit also. Understand what the pecking order of the organization is. Understand, read the room. If you see that it's sort of, going to a different direction, you can disagree. You can put your point. You can give all the evidences. It doesn't float, no problem. Disagree, commit, go and do it.
Sort of the next part that I want to move on is to talk and understand about hiring and some thoughts that you may have for the design community in general. What this means is, I know for a fact that when you were at Airtel, you managed a team of 80 plus members, and you've built and grown teams completely, right? So what I want to understand is what are some strategies that you implement while you are hiring teams?
That's a good one. I think if we can think about it as two parts, is how do you hire for an organization versus how do you hire a designer?
Okay.
Right. Like I said, it's important to empathize with the organization in the first place. So you will hire accordingly. I think that's the broad principle. Okay. Not all hiring is the same. And you will hire based on what an organization is looking for or needs desperately at that particular point of time. Yeah. So it's very situational. But I think broadly what's happened is a lot of people now broadly understand UX, even even business understands UX to a certain level. And therefore, UX is something that has become very deeply ingrained as customer centricity. People have started using so many D2C products out there that they already understand what good patterns and good design looks and sounds and feels like, right? But that is not something we had a lot in the past of references. So let's say that the rest of the whole non-design community is also coming up the curve on what good design looks, feels, and all of that, right? So therefore, what's also happening is, I think there's a breed of visual communication that's differentiating the products now. So I think it's a very mega trend that you have to be good with visual communication to begin with, and then everything else flows from there. Because especially if I'm a leader who's already strategic and I know my stuff and I'm able to sort of get that, I definitely need people who are able to produce to begin with, and then they're able to connect and they're able to architect and so on and so forth. Especially like you said, for domains that may seem a little bit boring.
Yeah.
For me, I think visual communication becomes very important. Okay, so animation, illustration, UI design, etc. Once you have done those table stakes, now are you someone who can think strategically and so on and so forth? On the other side of it, I would say if you're going to, so by the way, I have both set teams and I have reset teams.
Yeah.
And I think they're very different flavors. From setting up a team, I think it's very important to get a fantastic first line of leaders under you. So my strategy is very simple. If I have to set a team up, I would spend considerable, disproportionate amount of time looking for that one or two leaders for the critical functions, which means I need to know which functions are critical to begin with. And I will not hire junior designers before I hire the senior person. I would rather work with an agency, right? Because they're more fluid that way. And once the leader has arrived under you, you get them to hire, because inheriting a team is significantly more difficult than hiring a team. When you hire a team, you are imprinting your credibility on top of them from day zero. But if you are inheriting a team, you have to build that as well. So that is a huge dynamic. If it comes to resetting a team, it means that you have to give people time. You have to give yourself the time to understand what are the team fracture points, where is impact required, or where's the right skill set or the absence thereof, for example, or where are the cultural differences and conflicts between team members if required. But you give yourself and them good amount of time for attribution. You give them yourself enough time to understand and give them positive, constructive feedback with a very strong call out that this is the threshold that we will try and reach. And if it doesn't happen, then replacements will have to be made, right? Yeah. But it's a very difficult thing, to be very frank, especially the second part on the resetting part. But I think hiring and resetting are both equally important to understand for a design leader. Also, I would say that, there are actually 5 stages of teams. Did you know that? There are 5 stages of a team formation.
Please enlighten.
I also read about this. It was very fascinating. There's a storming phase where you are thinking about a team, let's say 0 to 1. You are then forming a team, you're hiring. Then you are norming, which means that you're setting the norms and systems and processes. Then you are transforming. You have done all of that stuff. Now you're creating value. And finally, when you have set all of that, you have created value and you have systematized and automated that value, it's time for you to reduce the team cost, obviously. That's called adjourning. So, depending on where you as a design leader enter the organization, please be aware of what order you are in. That's very important.
That's a great framework. I think that's something I wouldn't say in those words and those ideas and those thoughts, but somewhere or the other, we at Pineapple try following, but yet to sort of see the adjourning forming phase, right? Transforming phase. So that being said, sort of, my next question is that, because when you've switched your jobs previously or job roles previously, you've told that it is very important for people to get into the organization and take a bet on the people who you are going to work with. So how important is it for someone who's newly joining an organization to take a bet on the people around you as compared to just the work?
So great question. Again, if I were to go deeper, I think it varies strongly between design leaders and young individual contributors. I think let's cut it down to culture. You want to get in an organization that has a good design culture, for that matter, right?
Correct.
As a leader, you have more leverage to make changes. As someone who's junior, your leverage is much lesser. Correct. So as a junior, you may not even be able to request that walkthrough of the team, but it's always good to understand who your peers are. Are they fun? Right? Do they care about craft and taste? Do they have good taste, for example? You want to be amongst those people, right? And are some of them smarter than you are? That's important. As a design leader, though, as a design leader, you have to think yourselves as a co-founder. It's a very clean and strong mental model that I'm going to transform this organization in partnership with everyone who's at the top. Therefore, do I like my co-founders? And that's a story all of us know. If co-founders do not have chemistry, doesn't work, right? That's a very basic, important thing, which is why you've got to meet people. You've got to bet. So you'll get to understand what kind of, I'll keep funding and all that stuff out. But where is their heart actually? Do they care about what I'm going to bring to the table? And is there a certain amount of resource available to me to kind of bring that impact? Are the ingredients there? Things might not be perfect, but are people supporting me? And are there going to be resources that over a period of time can help me bring that transformation? So think of yourself as a co-founder. So that's a clear mental model, I'd say. So when you are joining organizations, you have to take bets. As a hiring manager, I take bets because no one can understand a candidate completely in interviews. But as a candidate, especially if you are young and you are joining the industry, you it's important for you to develop a good taste. It's important for you to focus on your craft. And it's important for you to sort of make sure that you're able to execute and bring that craft in collaboration with other people. So let's just talk about these three things, right? This means that you have got to find yourself amidst a set of people who have good taste and who can elevate your taste. I think that's very important. Go to their LinkedIn, see what, stalk them.
Yeah.
Go to Instagram if possible, check what they're into, what's the vibe. Right, go and speak with them. Then when it comes to craft, are these people that you're actually getting along with, do they have good craft? Do they care about good craft and meticulousness? So you will see the kind of work they're doing. Are they proud? Are they bragging about some of the work they're doing? And then finally, execution. See whether, they have some leeway to sort of like talk to engineers and stuff, etc. Okay. So if these things are in place, I think you can forego some amount of bonus or some amount of salary, to be frank, because that often pays you much higher in the long term, according to me, right? I personally have taken cuts. I have joined organizations where there was a choice to join other organizations, like I said, 5x, right? But I think I took a bet and it paid off, albeit as a leader, but as a junior as well, it makes a big difference to join in a place that, you feel that you'll fit in, perhaps.
So what I want to talk about is you, in across multiple questions that we had conversations on, you spoke about taste. This is something I'm dying to ask you now. So
Is a new kid in the block, but
taste is essentially very subjective, right? I may like blue, you may like green.
sure.
Now, how do you know what is the right taste? One. And second is, in your experience, how does someone actually start building the taste once they recognize that maybe I have to build taste?
Got it. It's such a big topic. We could have an entire seminar on this. And I'm telling you, I'm not prepared for this because it's a very complicated concept.
Yeah.
And you rightfully articulated it. It's very complicated. I have thought about it. I don't have a great answer, to be very frank.
That's okay.
But I'll try and articulate the extent I can. You have to think of yourself as a person who by nature or by nurture is a certain way.
Yeah. Okay.
You have a persona, you have a personality. Think of that. Think of yourself as an artist. That expression is your art.
Good.
It's on how you dress, what you dress, etc., all of that stuff, right? But now put yourself in a certain context. Does that context actually draw value and fit there, for example?
Yeah.
Think of that as design versus art. Does it solve that particular purpose, right?
Yeah.
For example, I might go to an organization that is very chic. For example, honestly, if I go to Louis Vuitton or if I go to, let's say, Bugatti or Ferrari tomorrow, and I start making very basic, non-transformational, non-noble thoughts and stuff, they'll be like, yeah, theek hai, he is there, right? Because their expectation is much higher in terms of that particular taste. I'd say the same thing, that you can be who you are, but in a certain context, what they need out of it and the value, things that they value out there, that would be what good taste will be in that context. For example, you may have good taste in context A, but that might be in very bad taste, just like a joke in the wrong time.
Yeah. But that's absolutely correct. I think it's actually a brilliant example. So understanding that persona of what you are actually living with, putting yourself in that shoe, and then trying to realize that person's shoe, whoever that person is, what their taste would really look like, that could be great taste. And like you rightly said, taste A in a certain context can be right, and taste B in a certain context can be right. So it can be completely subjective, but
But it's your ability to discern between this as well. Yeah. There is a little prayer that we say, right? Dear God, sort of help me with the things that I cannot control, or XYZ, and the wisdom to differentiate between the two. It's a lot like that. I think the basis of taste is your ability to discern first and foremost, and then to apply it, maybe. But can you tell good things from bad, for example?
Perfect. So Absolutely, I enjoyed his answer. It was not. It was a fairly nurtured answer, honestly. Almost like you were prepared. So don't worry about that. But what I'm going to come back to is more about hiring. I'm going to bring my focus back. I thought this was interesting, so I just asked you in between, right? Sort what I want to ask is, what are some red flags that you see when you potentially hire someone? This could help anyone who's applying to organizations understand what could actually be termed as red flags.
I think you want to first and foremost, of course, you want good craft, but good craft is still easy to understand. You know, because you have a portfolio, you have LinkedIn, you kind of understand, you get that particular thing. But what you often do not get to understand during interviews that are very short or do not run for very long is integrity. So integrity is a very, very, very big factor for me. I would rather, sort of like hire someone who has got some chops with very high integrity, and they can. I see that there's a potential to grow, right? While being humble and while sort of being on a growth path, then to get someone who is fickle and knows their craft very well, but they're not reliable. Remember, I talked about trust and reliability, right? So that's my red flag. So in your interviews, if you are calling out things, but you're not able to ratify them, or you're saying things too fast to fill up your resume, but you're not able to go deeper into those things, or not able to give tangible examples, it definitely raised the alarms for me.
Yeah. So sort of, I understand. But what if in the case where you start finding the red flags later within a person, and then it comes to letting a team member go? What I would like to know is, when should you decide that you are ready to let go of a team member? Or on what basis do you decide that you are ready to let go of a team member?
I think, like I said, firing is a lot like hiring, actually, in reverse.
Okay.
We are talking tenet in reverse, almost. One of the very easy mental models that one of my current leaders have given to me is that, Sourav, you should ask a very simple question. You have worked with someone for the past N period. You know this person can do this. You have tried your best. This is the max they can do. Now, imagine they're not in the company. Would you hire them? If your answer is no, or it is vague, it is time to let them go.
It's a simple but such a profound exercise. Honestly.
Very profound. Very profound.
Okay. All right. It makes me think of a few things. But that being said, all right, I'm going to come back to hiring, and I'm going to talk about, we spoke about red flags, and then I'm going to talk about some green flags rather. So when you are hiring someone, let's talk about two things. One across who's associate designer at the starting level,
Sure.
and someone who's at a mid-senior, senior level.
Sure.
What are three things that you look for? And they could be the same, but what are three things that you look for while hiring someone?
The first thing I look for sure, is polish and craft. I do.
Okay.
Right? I already talked about integrity, and I talked about honesty and humility. I'm going to keep them aside for a moment. Those things come up in the body language and all of that stuff. So I'm going to keep the power aspects, softer aspects of it aside. Let me talk more technical. So I definitely look for polish in work, which goes back to the idea of meticulousness we talked about. And in fact, when I was hiring, to be very frank, this is a weird story. When I was hiring, at some point, I would ask the designers to give me their phones, and I'd check how have they arranged their home screen on their mobile phone. They were taken by surprise, but that gave me a lot of insight as to how do you group information, how do you see things, what's your priority, or are they just all? I really judge designers who have files all over the desktop and they're not in folders, for example, because that's all about being meticulous.
Yeah, how organized you are. So many things that it's a great way. I'm not sure if I can recommend, but it's a good way to sort of understand someone.
The second thing I look for is curiosity, a sense of wonder, because it's very easy as a product designer, it's very easy to get bored, or it's very easy to let go of something, But if you switch that with a sense of curiosity, it kind of gives you energy to keep going out there. So that's very, very important, and that's curiosity about new things as well. the whole point of learning, unlearning, relearning, and whether you are keeping yourself up to date with stuff. So curiosity is something you cannot teach people. Similarly, meticulousness is something you can teach, but taste is also a little difficult, I think. But let's just say that, they are smart enough. And the third thing I would look for when I'm hiring someone is, again, the ability to articulate what they have done. Are they producers or are they connectors? I definitely want to look for connectors, at least.
Yeah.
Right? So do not be producers who only say that I did this because someone asked me to do it, versus I did this was the reason, this was the impact. At least be able to articulate it. Or be humble enough to say that I worked under a senior designer, this was not known to me, I'll get back to you with an answer, or sorry, I do not have an answer.
Yeah, either or. And that also somewhere says and talks about articulation, even if you don't know the answer. But I just want to write on that, because one of the most important things I believe, and I want to share this as well, is I think curiosity is an extremely, extremely underrated skill. I think that's the first thing that I would also look for whenever I would look for within a team member, because that says a lot about not just their personality, but their strength, their way of thinking, and whether they actually want to work with you.
Absolutely.
Or actually want to solve this problem. Otherwise, everything else is, even craft for that matter, sorry to say this, but even craft for that matter would probably go to waste because they're not curious enough.
Completely agree. Or it will go out of date.
It will out of date.
Right. And I think there's another thing I didn't mention, but that's the easiness of working with people. That's also severely underrated. I talk about it all the time. It's so underrated about being easy to work with. People can make it very difficult or very easy to work with them, right? And I think that's also something I look for signals. Here you have to, as a leader, if you're hiring specially, or as designers, if you're introverts, this can be a little bit of a beige flag. So you have to be a little careful where you call out your personality in the meeting, and it's okay because designers come from everywhere. They can be anyone. Honestly, you wouldn't believe that I actually mark myself as an introvert. But when it comes to work, I'm very extroverted, so probably I'm ambiverted. But it did take me a good amount of time to come out of my shell and sort of like do it for the sake of the people around me, right? So being communicative, being easy to work with, and not carrying that grudge and self-orientation that we talked about are very, very, very critical things out there.
I fully hear you on that. And I want to talk about, after we spoke about hiring and then we spoke about firing, I want to talk about the topic of the town, which is AI, right? As someone who leads a large design team, how do you as a leader actually stay updated? Because you have tons of things to do. We're always busy. How are you staying updated with the latest tech? Because that's, I'm sure, is very crucial for you as well.
No, you have to dedicate time. Like I said, honestly, I look for curious people also because I'm curious myself. I'm a very curious cat. And designers should never only design. You have to be spatially aware of where you're operating, everything that's happening around you, at least some of the industries that strongly impact you. I think tech. So if you go to my Instagram, it's filled with accounts that post about AI on their carousels. Honestly, I do follow people, but they do not show up on my wall because I have hidden all of them. So my Instagram is almost like a reading material if I go there. So every time I go, there is something I learn and come back. That's an easy way. Or you can create an alternate account as well to do that. That's a good way, because if you are not going to learning, let learning come to you. Yeah, right. That's one way. Second is, with AI progressing so fast, unless you have done something with your hand, you will not get to know. So you definitely need to try those out and go for those public betas or demos and stuff. I keep commenting on people's LinkedIn posts who say that we have launched a new product. Comment this if you want access.
Yeah.
Trust me, I keep doing that so many times, right?
Yeah.
And some of them I try, some of them I do not give a try. But right now, if you look at my desktop, you'll see more than 100 tabs with at least 50 of them being around AI and stuff and their tooling, right? So that's obviously on my personal laptop, but it's important that you are curious about it, you are reading about it, and then you are trying your hands at it a little bit at least.
Yeah.
And you have to take the time out for it, because if you have to lead the way, you have to be the most curious person in the room as well.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you cannot be the design co-founder I talked about, because you have to lead with vision, right? Your job at this level is to lead with vision. So that's what I would say.
But let's say you learned so much about AI, there are always these certain sets of skills that a designer would possess. So now with AI coming into the picture, what do you feel are some of the skills that are of designers that are getting dangerously devalued or undervalued out?
That's a good question. One right off the bat I can talk about is dev handovers. And I think that's a very obvious one, because with products we all know of, especially with Lovable, etc., designers are turning into design engineers as well. So, and with lots of the Figma features that have come up, Figma sites, etc., it's directly gone from execution, from your design to execution, that completely leapfrogging the entire handover cycle. So I would say that was like a best practice that's going to go away. I think your ability to be pixel perfect would also very soon go away, because with AI becoming more and more spatially aware, especially with MCPs coming in, where the MCP works with the LLM to understand the design system and what's your spacing, what's your margin, etc., and how things are supposed to be. I feel that, again, the same thing, that meticulousness I was talking about might go away from a UI perspective, but you have to be focused on the UX aspect of some of those things, which still have high value, right? What else? Your ability to glean insights from secondary data will also sort of go away. Imagine you have Tableau, or you have, any other GA or something, you have data being collected. There are tons of products that work like product managers and analysts that will spew out insights for you to start working on. So you do not need to kind of go ahead and sort of do that. So that's out there. Right off the bat, I'm sure there are tons of others, but they're smaller.
For sure. But one thing that I don't think you are ever going to say is taste. Taste is something that probably might not work.
Taste won't, because, it's just like AI is a tool at the end of the day, and what you make out of it is sort of there. By the way, there is AI, I forgot the name of that, where one button, it generates the branding, generates the marketing materials, generates the ads, the product shots, the entire 12 yards. So it's crazy.
I think it's just taking away hands. I don't think it can take away the craft that's ingrained within you.
Yeah. We have to elevate ourselves.
Elevating ourselves, yeah, more so than anything. But Sourav, with that, this was a beautiful conversation. But I'm going to end this. It's not ending. I'm just going to end this with a few questions. So we call it the Chop Chop. It's been given by, the name has been representing pineapple in chopping food. And it's given by one of their ex-speakers who was speaking, and he suggested it. Then he said, I'm going to ask you 4 to 5 questions. And I just would perfect. That's the right way to go on it. It's the right stance as well.
Okay.
4 to 5 questions, either one word, one sentence answers, nothing else, right? I want to ask you, first is, what's the one product that you wish you had designed or built?
Google Maps.
Okay, I'm actually wanting to know why, but I've created that rule. So I'll stick with that. But what is that one thing that your team does not like about you?
I tend to be overtly critical with very minute things. So I'm sure they will not tell this to me, but I'm sure that they hate me for it.
Okay, all right. Okay. So what's one product mindset shift that most designers miss?
I'll just bring it from the past, from strategy to systems.
Okay.
You have to work with the system to get it out there.
Okay. What's one important cultural trait to ingrain within a design team?
Cultural trait? It's a team, I think. And that's a loaded word, because it means something to be a team. So you have to work as a team, is what I would say. Everything will come. Everything will come. This is table stake.
All right. One last question. What's your favorite software to use? Or favorite app to use? Let's put it like that.
My favorite app to use. I have been asked this a bunch of times in the past, so it becomes a little tricky in such cases. So I have an answer ready for that. There is this app called Tunnel Bear.
Okay.
Tunnel Bear is a VPN app.
Okay.
It's very obscure. And you might have actually seen a lot of those Pinterest boards where you are typing in the username, it's looking at it, the mascot is looking at it, but when you're typing the password, the mascot shuts their eyes.
Yeah.
They were some of the earliest adopters.
Oh.
Beautiful, clean UI, all of that. Not that I use VPN a lot, but when I used to use it when I was staying overseas, this very fast became one of my favorites. I have not used it a lot since then. I don't know how it is today, but I think such beautiful, timeless design.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's one of the first we've got as a VPN that's been put as their favorite apps in the entire series. But that being said, thank you so much, Sourav, for being here. It was immense pleasure talking to you. And I truly believe that these insights will be really, really well absorbed by a lot of folks who are watching this.
Thank you so much for inviting me here. I could talk for days.
Yeah, I could talk for days as well.
But I think the questions were beautiful. I love talking about them, and the whole thing was amazing. Thank you so much for getting me.
Always appreciate it. Thanks, Sourav.
Thank you.